if you can unmute yourself. I hope online people can hear me. Welcome everyone to CyberNow Labs. My name is Hassan. I am one of the co-founders of CyberNow Labs. I'm going to take about 2 minutes of your time before Max starts the QRadar session. What we do at CyberNow Labs is basically we help people from different backgrounds, IT or non-IT, with getting into cybersecurity. And how we do that, we have a cybersecurity analyst program, which kind of consists of 3 main areas that we focus on. Certification is the first one. The first couple of weeks we focus on that. It's a 4-month program, 18 weeks program. We focus on certification and basically introduction to cybersecurity, some of the basic cybersecurity concepts first, get you Security Plus certified at the end of this 45-day period. And then the hands-on piece starts. This is really what makes this program different than any other program in this region. Next door, and you can take a look after the QRadar session, we have our Secure Operations Center, and we use enterprise tools in there, from QRadar to Splunk to, you name it, Kibana, Elasticsearch, all of the tools that you can see in an enterprise SOC. As part of my day job, I work at a financial institution over in Tysons, and we use most of those tools at my current place as well. So we go through that, basically teach you exactly what you need to know if you were to start working as a security analyst on day 1, let's say. What are the tools and processes that you need to know to do your job? We go over that. And the last session, which takes about 4 weeks, is around interview prep, making sure you know, like you may know cybersecurity, you may have technical expertise, but we also want to make sure that you can showcase that during the interview. And we do mock interviews, behavior and technical interviews, help you polish your resume, and so on. So in a nutshell, in like 2 minutes, this is what we do here. We've got our 3rd cohort running right now. The 4th cohort will start on January 11th. So we've got about 2 months or so before our 4th cohort starts. If you want to get more information about the program or sign up for one of our information sessions, you can go to cybernowlabs.com and click on sign up for our next information session. With that, if there are no questions, I'll introduce Max. Max is our, not our actually, but Max is IBM's, one of IBM's security engineers, QRadar engineers. So he helps companies with integrating QRadar into their overall, I guess, SIEM function, SOC function. He can talk more about what he does at IBM on a daily basis and how he helps customers. Today he'll be walking through some of the use cases with us, some of the real use cases that he sees. He's got plenty of customers, and he's like seen this over and over again with his customers. So he's going to share those experiences with us. Max.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Let me get plugged up here. All right, and I just want to make sure, I don't know if I actually started sharing my screen, so let me share right here. Let's go. Perfect. Let me see if I can get some of this stuff out of the way. I think I can just drag this. Let's drag this out of the way for you guys here before I get started. All right, awesome. So before I get started, I want to talk a little bit about my history and my past. So I actually did my undergrad degree in history, so very different from cybersecurity. And I worked in a field for about 3 years that was not cybersecurity. I always kind of was just interested in cybersecurity. It sounded like something cool, something that was way beyond my capacity to understand, to actually do. Luckily, I was able to actually get the opportunity to move into this field. I actually started working in a SOC for several years and was a SOC analyst for a number of years at a university before I joined IBM and moved into a sales engineering role, where now I kind of help integrate, as he said, QRadar into all the other security tools that our customers have. The interesting thing about cybersecurity right now is most companies will probably have several dozen cybersecurity tools that they use. And so finding a way to actually make those things work where you're not just, opening up 17 tabs on your computer and going from one to the other and copying and pasting is quite a challenge. And that's one of the things that we try to tackle with QRadar. So let me move this back out of the way so I can get over to my PowerPoint. Here we go. Let's go. Can I? Oh, there we go. Perfect. Let's see. Taking a second for my phone. Oh, there we go. You guys see this? Perfect. So we're going to talk really quickly about SIMs in general, and then move into QRadar specifically. So just a show of hands, how many people are familiar with what a SIM is? Okay, a handful. How many have used a SIM before? Okay, about the same people who know what it is have used it before. Okay, not surprising. So let's talk about the challenges in cybersecurity and how SIMs can help with that. As I'm going through this, I like interaction. So if there's something that you want me to explain a little bit more, something that a comment you want to make, feel free to raise your hand. Don't be afraid to get involved today. So this is the real problem with a lot of cybersecurity, the field pretty much in general, is cybersecurity is quickly turning into kind of a data science field where we have a lot of information. If you ask people who work in a SOC in the cybersecurity field, the problem isn't getting data necessarily, it's getting data that's actually actionable, something that you can make sense of and get your hands around. And so what we try to do, and with many other SIMs do the same thing, is actually try to kind of parse down all that data. Some of our large customers are getting billions of different data sources per day that they have to analyze. There's no way you can do that without using and harnessing technology in inventive ways to make that happen. And so what do we try to do with SIMs is kind of get a view of everything that's going on inside of an organization. Whether that's their cloud or their users or some threat intelligence or what's actually happening on the application and endpoint inside the organization. You need to find a way to get all that information into one spot and kind of correlate that information together so that you can make some kind of actionable insights from that. So this kind of brings in what's the SIM function. So generally what SIMs will do is take things, logs from events, and correlate them, kind of put them into a data lake or a data warehouse. That works for me. Does that work for you guys? All right, great. So as you can see in the bottom left corner, you'll have things like security alerts and events, maybe some Active Directory showing user login, logout, account disables. And then you'll end up getting logs from servers and computers and kind of bringing that all together. That's generally how a SIM will work. But we need to think about what exactly we're feeding in there. And so for a lot of people, they think that logs are the end of are all that you need when it comes to analyzing data. So what is a log event essentially? A log event is just something from a machine. Pretty much every machine that we have these days is creating a log. Right now, your smartphone is creating a log. At your thermostat at home, if it has some kind of chip in it, there's probably a log right now saying temperature is 73.1 degrees. Humidity is 52.1%. So kind of what people are thinking is, hey, if we get those snapshots into a device at any time, we can replay those snapshots and find out what happened from a security standpoint. It's kind of like saying if we take enough pictures, if we go through it fast enough, we'll get a movie. That's kind of what people will see from logs. But there's actually a little more information I think is really important, not just logs, to bring into your SIM. So one of the things that QRadar does a little bit differently from many others is that we actually will bring in network activity as well. So being able to see that not just, hey, someone failed login 15 times and then logged in successfully, but also able to see, hey, once they logged in, they sent a terabyte of data out to this remote IP address. Being able to find that network information is really, really helpful as well. And this is something that's kind of foreign, especially if you're new to the cybersecurity field. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what we would consider a network flow. How many of you are familiar with the term metadata? Have you guys ever heard that before? So this is something that's really important to consider. This is essentially what a network flow will do. This is from SANS. This is a top cybersecurity institute, how they would define what a network flow is in terms of bringing it in. The way I like to conceptualize it is, let's say that your internet session is like a postcard. A flow is essentially saying, reading the front of that postcard, saying, here's who it's from, here's where it's going, and by looking at it, you can tell it's about this big. That's essentially what a flow will give you when looking at this data. And there's a lot of ways you can kind of extend that even further, going all the way down to actually looking at the contents of each packet. And so what does a flow allow you to do? Well, the thing about bringing in logs is essentially you can, as an attacker, one of the first things you might do when you break into an organization is just turn off the logs. So if I break into a machine, maybe I don't want people to keep track of what I'm doing. Well, I'll just delete or erase the logging function so that they can't see what I'm doing. You can't do that with a network. The fact that if you mess with a packet, you change the IP address, well, it's going to go to a different place than you'd want it to go. So it's immutable in ways that logs aren't. And you're able to find things like people moving from machine to machine and visibility into attackers' communications a lot better with flows. So from a kind of QRadar perspective, this is the information that we like to bring into our networks. So as we're getting all the security information into QRadar, it's coming from both your log events from your network flows. We're connecting to clouds. We're connecting to some threat feeds. So there's a lot of organizations that will go out and actually say, hey, this IP address, this website is harmful if you visit it. It's known to be bad. We'll bring that in as well and allow you to get a quick overview really quickly that this is good, this is normal, or this is bad, and you should take action right now. So kind of double down in what we started off in the beginning. We want to use the ability of machine learning, some advanced analytics to allow you to take all of these disparate data points and put them into one single view that allows you to take action. The other thing that's really, really helpful is that there's apps. So kind of just like your smartphone these days, if there's certain features that you want that don't come with the base product, you can go and download an extension or an app that will allow you to get extra features out of your product. Maybe you have a Cisco router in your organization, you can get the Cisco app and download that to connect it as well. An example would be something like a tool, like an endpoint tool like BigFix. So a lot of organizations, they'll come out, the problem they'll have is, they have tens of thousands of machines. How do you keep track of, when an attack happens against your phone, Apple will come up and I guess you guys seen this when you go to like General, there'll just be a 1 there saying, hey, like you need to update your phone. Well, how do you do that when you have tens of thousands of machines on your network? Well, there's tools like something like BigFix that allows organizations to keep track of all of that. And we can integrate directly into that without having to open up a second tab to say, hey, is this machine's being attacked? Is it vulnerable? Open new tab, log in. Well, how about we just click a button and figure it out? And then the nice thing too is that we have a very extensible architecture. About half of our customers will only have one server or one virtual machine that they're running their security product on for a SIM. And then some will have dozens, if not hundreds, depending on the size of the organization. So very, very customizable. And what's the ultimate impact? At the end of the day, it's really about being able to get a better security posture moving forward. So this is the advantages of having a SIM. I would say it's for QRadar and many others, this is the kind of thing organization will say. It helps us detect what's happening faster, it improves our response time, and it makes us much more efficient in our offerings. So before I move into a demo and a showcase, I want to see if there are any questions before I move in. All right, no questions. So let me show you in action. I'm giving you the brief overview. I want to show you how everything actually works in action. So again, let me move this out of here. Yeah.
So QRadar is collecting the logs.
Yes.
So how they are collecting those over the API, or they are writing a script they're sending? So what is the...
That's a good, yes. Yep, that's a really good question. So the question is, how do you actually get this data into QRadar? So there's a number of ways. We do have APIs, which essentially allows QRadar to log into your device and pull the logs out of there. That's one way. We also can take anything in like a syslog format. So as these machines are creating logs, you can just tell that machine, hey, anytime a log is sent, send it over to QRadar. So that's just a line of code you'd put in there. Yep.
So QRadar is agentless?
It is generally agentless. It can work with agents, so if like a Carbon Black or a Big Fix is there, we can take the logs through that way as well, but it doesn't require an agent. Only thing is, for some large Windows deployments where MSRPC would be flooded, we might want like a Win Collector, Sysmon, or Snare, something on there to make sure that there's fidelity in those logs. But for a good majority, agentless.
And are you supporting the CrowdStrike also?
Yes. So yeah, we do have the CrowdStrike app as well in our system.
The EDR full data or just whatever the incident data only?
That's a good question. I haven't used that exact app. Generally, the way it works is that it'll enrich the data in QRadar. So what it'll do is just the API and saying, hey, we're getting these indicators, and CrowdStrike will kind of add on to that. So I want to make sure, is this a little too small for you guys? I can zoom in a little more. I don't want to mess up the aspect ratio too much, but you know what? I'll make it just a little bigger here. Here we go. So this is exactly what an analyst would look at. So working in a SOC, this screen would kind of be your best friend. What we have in QRadar is the aspect of an offense. So for a lot of SIEMs, the way you generally will navigate through them is by searching. You'll have to make some pretty complex searches, maybe save those searches as dashboards. And then once that dashboard is saved, it'll run maybe every 5, 10, 15 minutes to update and let you know if a condition has been met. QRadar has a little bit different kind of perspective in this. We believe that if you're searching, it means you already missed something. We want to make it a little bit easier for you. So we have something called a custom rules engine, which is actually running in memory and waiting for conditions to be met. So let's say you have a rule, very simple rule. If someone fails login 15 times and then logs in successfully, let me know. Because that's a sign that maybe someone was just trying every password they could, and then on the 16th try, they actually got it right. Well, instead of waiting for a search to run every 15 minutes to see if that condition is triggered, what we'll actually do is once that first failed login happens, we'll actually actively look, okay, 1 happened. Oh, 2 happened, 3 happened. And then once it hits 15, it's saying, all right, now I'm looking for a successful login to meet this rule. And as soon as that successful login happens, boom, you're alerted. There's no lag time, and it's right in front of your screen. And so when those conditions are met, it creates something called an offense. And I can go into exactly what that entails. So I'll start off with this one. So right now, one of the things that was one of the banes of my existence when I was a SOC analyst was the amounts of alerts I had to do, and the fact that alerts weren't always connected to each other in the SIEM I was using. So there's times where I would see one alert at 8 a.m. when I logged on, and I was like, oh, that looks pretty bad, but it looks like a pretty small incident. I'm not too worried about that. 11 a.m. as I'm triaging through alerts, I get to another one. Again, I'm like, this could be bad, but I don't think it's a huge deal. Well, as I continue triaging, guaranteed at like 4:59, I was going to see something that the system said was not really important. But when I looked at it, actually tied together two things I'd seen earlier in the day and realized this is an actual big incident. And I just hadn't realized, connected all the dots myself to realize all of these factors were in play. That either meant I had to stay late that day or show up early the next morning to make sure that incident was responded to. Well, and in QRadar, we will actually compound these alerts. So for every alert that we see is common to each other, we'll actually give you an alert saying, this happened, or it starts from the bottom, this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. That way you don't have to search and figure out what you're missing. It's all in front of you right there. So we can see from this one, we have some large outbound transfers of data. So that means data is leaving our network. And then we also have some processes being created and PS exec is detected. For those who don't know what PS exec is, it's a way of remotely controlling another machine across the internet. So it's very, very popular tools for hackers to use because they can put PS exec on your system, use PS exec on your system to control it from their house. Maybe they can take a picture of you from their webcam or through your webcam, see everything you type. It's not something that you would normally see on a system too often, and an indicator that there might be a compromise. So right now, as an analyst, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, all right, potentially a machine has been compromised, and then we also have data leaving our network. Yes?
What's sender resilient?
Oh, good question. So, and I'll show this integration later. So one of the hard parts about, the question is, what is center resilient, which is this button right here. One of the rough things about being an analyst is, for me, there's probably 7 or 8 scenarios that I knew pretty well. If a phishing email happens, do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, we're done with this phishing email, moving on to the next task. Well, there's sometimes where things happen where I had no idea what to do. There's an incident type where I'd be like, I've never seen this before. And I have to go ask my boss what to do. And I remember for me one day in particular, there was something that hadn't happened in a few years that I'd heard of. My boss was out for the day. He was a SOC manager. His boss, who was the deputy CISO, deputy chief information security officer, was out for the day. His boss, who was the chief information security officer, was out for the day. So it was just me and the CIO there that day. I couldn't go to the CIO because he doesn't know cybersecurity. I couldn't go and ask him what to do. So I ended up having to call people in on their day off, which made me not very popular to deal with this incident. Instead, what we can do is send us to a tool like Resilient. There's a few other tools that kind of do similar things. Demisto by Palo Alto, Phantom, which is a Splunk product. And essentially what they'll do is give you a playbook saying, hey, you've never seen this incident before, maybe you have, but do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then you're closing out this incident, you can complete your investigation, and you can move on to the next thing. So it's kind of like pulling a binder off of a rack and realizing what steps you have to do to investigate an incident. Yes? So it's actually a kind of software that kind of guides you through the investigation. And I can show that a little bit later because we do it. It looks like it is something interesting. And again, something I'm really jealous of because I did not have that when I was working in the SOC, and it would have made my life a lot easier. And there's a direct API connection here where we can take an incident in QRadar and send it over to one of those incident response platforms. So looking back at this incident, there's a few things that I would start asking myself when I'm as an analyst. Okay, with large outbound transfer, potentially connected, infected machine. The first thing I'd say is large outbound transfer. How large? How much data is going? Where did it go to? Well, I can actually just click on these network flows here and get a little insight into what's happening. So right now, QRadar is going through its database, looking for all the flows that were connected to this incident, and we're seeing here, wow, there's a lot of flows. I've used a few other tools to kind of give you net flow information. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Bro, IDS. I've used that in the past. answering this question would actually take me a little bit of time. I'd have to write a custom script to go and figure out exactly the values of each of these lines. What I can do with QRadar is just toggle by destination IP right through the graphical interface and get a quick answer. So right here I'm seeing the source bytes, which is the data that left our network. Looks like it's about 3.5 gigabytes of data. So pretty sizable information. I can also see it went to an IP address. I can click over this flag somewhere in the Netherlands. So for an institution that has some privacy concerns, we now have data going to another country. And then the other thing that we can see here is this is actually coming from our personnel record server. So that's pretty bad. 3.5 gigabytes worth of probably HR records, employee social security numbers, maybe bank accounts that we're paying them into. It's gone to another country. So this is a pretty serious incident. Within pretty much 2 button clicks of opening up this incident, I've realized, wow, I can escalate this. I need to escalate this because this is bad. I can also go and say, look at some of the other information on this page. There's a lot of helpful information as I go through this. We get some top source IPs and destination IPs, some categories. And I can also say, hey, there's a user here. Well, I would want to see what did this user do over the course of this investigation, or over the course of this incident. So bring up the search function really quick. And I'm just going to do a search of the last 3 hours. Let's see what this person's been doing. Well, we can see here that you get a quick overview of what they're doing. In QRadar, we do something called normalizing the fields. So that way you don't have to read every log item to understand quickly what's going on. This is the default view. I want to show you what a lot of other SIMs and what the actual raw log format will look like. So as you can see right here, this is what the actual logs that we're looking at look like. I spent a lot of time looking at logs just like this. It's not very fun because each log format is different. So maybe one starts with source IP, one starts with time, one starts with destination IP. That means I have to read each line by line to understand exactly what's going on. It's going to take me a few minutes just to read this over. Instead, I can just sort by event name. Let's see what the default view is and get rid of all duplicates. That's essentially what sorting by event name will do. So here, boom. This is no duplicates, high-level overview of what's going on. Let's see. Can you guys see anything worrying on the screen here that as an analyst you might say, that doesn't look good? Oh. Yeah, virus detected. Yeah, definitely worrying. Keylogger. Does everyone know what a keylogger is? Raise your hand if you're from. Yeah. All right, you raise your hand. Explain what a keylogger is.
Yeah, someone is have the capability to read what you write on your keyboard.
Exactly. So a keylogger is, as you type, someone can actually watch what you're typing. So they say, hey, capital1.com, interesting. And then they say, hey, that looks like a username, interesting. That looks like a password, awesome. Well, a keylogger gives you those kind of capabilities. Definitely not good to see on your system. So we picked up a lot of the, did not mean to open that. Sorry about that, guys. So we'll see. We can also see some other worrying things here. So, for instance, does anyone know where this flag is? Oh, I just hovered over it. Korea. Exactly. Which Korea? Yeah, so this is the North Korean flag. We actually took this data from this is actually public data from a known North Korean breach they did against the organization and fed this back into the system. Interesting thing is they actually launched this attack directly from North Korea. There's only 256 IP addresses in all of North Korea, so not too hard to attribute it. Maybe it was one of those things where they said if we do it so blatantly, maybe people won't think we did it because they think it's so blatant, but I don't know. Yeah.
About being a SOC analyst is you get to learn all those flags.
Oh, yeah. You get to learn all the flags really, really quickly. So, again, as an analyst, with this in a few button clicks, not only have I known, all right, we have a lot of data leaving our network, but we can also go ahead and start investigating. Okay, virus, keylogger. I'm starting to think this is a pretty serious incident. I'll start roping in other people to help me investigate this or escalate this so we can get a conclusion really fast. Again, this was from looking at this within 5 minutes, we've known this is a really, really serious incident to continue to investigate. Well, for me, I would go and get my boss and be like, hey, look at what I'm doing right here. Or look at what I'm seeing right here. This looks bad. Maybe he has to go and contact the CISO. Maybe CISO has to contact legal. So that would be where Resilient would come in. As a Resilient, you can actually assign this. You can actually send this over to the legal and say, hey, based on our jurisdictions, what do we have to meet and able to meet all of our legal guidelines? You know, maybe some of our colleagues are from the EU. That means they fall under a data protection regulation called GDPR, which is very strict. We have to report this within 48 hours. The legal would need to know. The lawyers would need to get involved in that point as well. And so that's where another tool like Resilient would come into play. All right, so that's kind of the base functionality of QRadar without using any apps. These are the kind of use cases our customers are looking at. I want to showcase, oh, yes.
Do you have any kind of queries that
Oh, yeah, so great point. So
The question was, do you have any queries that you use? And for in-class folks, you can use these microphones. I didn't think a lot of questions. So you can use the mic. All you need to do is basically press this button here and talk. And when you're done, press it again.
For the ones who are watching us online,
Yeah.
that's why we wanted them to like questions.
yep.
Thank you.
So there's a few ways to search through QRadar. I would say for most of our users, they would end up doing something like this, which is just adding a filter. So you can just select the filter, source or destination IP equals blah, blah, blah. And you can start typing in whatever IP you'd like, and that will filter it. So 168.2.99, for instance, I could add this filter and just say last 3 hours again. And then with this filter, I should get some hits. Yep. So there, I'm getting some hits that way. That's one way. Without using a filter, for those of you who've used something like Elasticsearch or Splunk, who are used to more advanced filter searches, you can just use AQL, which is very similar to SQL. It's our query language within QRadar. Oh, there we go. So I could do something. If any of you ever used SQL before, it'll be really similar to what you've seen there, where so you just structure any kind of condition, so and do a search from there as well. So yes. So this is all within our base QRadar, but I do want to highlight some of the apps and some of the kind of advanced features that our users are using as well. So our single most popular application on QRadar right now is one called User Analytics. It does user behavior anomaly detection. So what it's actually looking for is people who are trusted employees, users who are doing nefarious things. So over the last few years, there's been some pretty high-profile cases of people stealing data for gain. It's pretty common in a lot of fields, actually, especially in tech fields. For someone who's working on a project, right before they leave their company, what they'll do is take that copyrighted intellectual property, save that on a thumb drive, and then bring it over to their new company. There's some pretty big lawsuits, especially when it comes to like self-driving cars and autonomous vehicles. Very high-profile cases of people literally stealing the source code from one product, moving over to a new company, and saying, "Hey, look what I built. You guys want to use this too?" Which is highly illegal, along with being unethical. So what user behavior anomaly detection allows you to do is start tracking users and figuring out what if they're doing something nefarious on their network. This is especially within some of the government installations, something they're really, really worried about right now. So there's a few different data sources we can feed into this. Again, we're bringing in everything from base QRadar. We're also making some assumptions and some rules to trigger. So someone going to a gambling website at work, that's something we might want to trigger on because it's generally not allowed in most workplaces. unless you work at a casino, then it's probably allowed. We can also bring in some anomaly rules. So we're saying, hey, this person logs in to start work every day at 8 a.m. and they log out every day at 4:30 p.m. Well, what happens when, and they're doing this from Tyson's. Well, what happens when they log in at 2 a.m. From Singapore? Well, we'd want to alert to that because maybe their account got compromised and something bad is going on there. Yes?
So do you do anything like this user never runs command.exe and all of a sudden they ran command.exe which they never ever do?
Exactly. So we'll have some out-of-the-box rules for that, and that's a great application for. We also can do machine learning. So what we'll actually do is we'll actually start bringing in some advanced analytics and saying, hey, this user uses 5 things. They use Firefox, they use Microsoft Word, they use Excel, and they use PowerPoint, and they use Skype. Well, for some reason today, after 9 months of never doing this, they opened up the command line and started doing some very technical commands in there that you'd only expect from an IT person, and this person's in accounting. Well, then we'd use machine learning and we'd say, hey, this is a huge deviation from their normal behavior, and flag based on that as well. So very good question. Yes?
What log sources does user analysis rely
on? Any of the log sources you can feed into it. Endpoint logs would be pretty helpful. So something like, again, like a Carbon Black or Sysmon monitoring their workstation. Web proxy logs are really helpful, and the use case I'll show you relies a lot on kind of the web proxy logs of saying, hey, this is some weird browsing behavior we're seeing on as well. And we're also actually bringing in some of our network flows as well. So saying, hey, this person went to Dropbox and put 10 gigabytes worth of data in there when they normally wouldn't do that. We can catch that as well. So we'll go ahead and go into this user right here. You can see from the colors on screen here, this person is flagged as our one high-risk user right now. And for anyone familiar with American history, you can tell that the guy named Ben Arnold is probably a bad guy. Very famous person during the Revolutionary War, American general who switched over to the British side to fight against the Americans back in the 1700s. Yeah, again, history major, had a little fun when creating this. And so you can see from his job title, this guy is an assistant deputy director of physical security at an organization in Washington, D.C. Let me just zoom out a little bit so I can get all the data here on screen. And we can see there's actually one spike here of risk. And this is given a risk score of 220, and this is the dark red here. One of the things I'd ask is, okay, how do they get to this risk score? We can actually see all the components of the risk score right here. So these numbers on the right all add up to 220. You can see there's some things here that look bad. Browse to a malicious website, data exfiltrated by removable media. That looks bad. We can also see some things in here that don't look quite as bad. So education sites, business sites, communication sites. Those don't look quite as bad, but we can see exactly why these ended up getting flagged. So let's start off with this business service site. So we can see, all right, let me zoom back in here a little bit so we can see this log. We can see that this person was doing a job search, which in its face, not too bad. I always wanted an ambitious employee in my organization, so I wouldn't be too worried about that necessarily until we see exactly what this person was looking at. Remember, this person was assistant deputy director of physical security. Well, now they're looking for a pretty much analogous job in a different country, one that people would not consider on good terms with our current government. So that's something to worry about right there. We can go and then move into. Yes.
Yeah, this URL was HTTP, but if it is HTTPS,
yes.
How do you know that it's if there is no man in middle?
So essentially, what our products will use is, especially for a lot of our bigger companies, will have something like a Gigamon or an A10 which will do SSL decryption for an organization. It's essentially an intentional man in the middle where they're sitting on and decrypting that traffic, and we'll just plug it right into those devices and get that unencrypted traffic before it's re-encrypted and sent out.
But many times, what if you do that the some of the application doing the pinning, that is causing so much problem, which will not allow you to run that specific application because it is a different certificate.
Well, that's true. I mean, based on what you have in your environment and the applications you're running, that could be an issue. But for a lot of our clients, I would say they are doing some of that SSL decryption as it's happening, and we're reading that traffic. Also, this is specifically coming from a proxy log, so like a blue coat. This is a blue coat proxy, which would do something similar. Yep. Yep. Yes.
The user initiated traffic that is being monitored.
Yes.
Like the application log where customer says an application from a company to company, there's a dedicated encryption happening, right?
Yes. So this one is it's indexing just on the user itself. Yep. Good question. And so we can follow this one along. Okay, they were on that site. Looks like they went to a communication site. Well, what are we seeing here? Oh, this is the first one. Let's go ahead and look at the second incident, different IP address. This time they went to something that was tagged by Bluecoat as a search engine portal. You can see it's not the most sophisticated of attacks. This is someone who is actually going and looking up, how do I steal government secrets? This has actually happened before. For every person you get that's very sophisticated, like a Snowden, for instance, you get someone like there was a woman a few years ago who got caught stealing some secrets from the government. Her name was, it's a kind of bizarre name. Her name was Reality Winner, who was doing stuff that was about this level of sophistication, and actually was successfully able to exfiltrate the data. She got caught pretty quickly, but was able to pass this data on before she got caught. From there, we can see, okay, they went to an education site. Let's follow this one. As we're looking from a legal standpoint, we can actually now start seeing things that aren't just worrying, but we can start getting some intent in there as well. So they probably clicked on the first link in Google, starting to realize, okay, let me learn how to do this. And then from there, we can go and see what the next thing was. They went and downloaded the Tor browser. So is anyone familiar with the Tor browser?
Yes.
Do you want to explain exactly how or what it does?
Also, it's an onion type of browser where you cannot track back where the original appeared.
Exactly. So it's a browser that essentially makes it harder to track exactly what you're doing online. There are definitely legitimate use cases for it, but in a government organization, it'd be pretty worrying to see someone using this at their facility. From there, we can see, okay, they access the network share. So this is coming from some Windows logs. If we scroll down, we can actually see exactly what share it was. So this looks like something that has some serious information on it. This is a privileged information share. And then finally, we can see, awesome. No worries.
CyberNow is everywhere.
Yes.
Son was behind this attack. We were able to find the real attacker now.
Exactly. And from there, we can see that this person actually wrote onto a removable media. You know, this is coming from going from that shared driver and then writing this onto a removable media. So we've caught this whole thing. From here, we can go and start an investigation. Maybe I'll write a note saying contacting law enforcement. So. And if our customer happened to have something like Watson here, we could go ahead and find that as well, or send it to there as well. We could also add them to a watch list so we keep track of what they're doing moving forward. So this is our single most popular app It is a free application on top of QRadar. We have about 195 different apps right now. 194 of them are free. The only one that costs money on top of what you paid just to get QRadar is Watson, which I'll show in just a minute. Another interesting feature we have is something called QRadar Network Insights. And what QRadar Network Insights allows you to do is actually start reading the contents of traffic going across the network. For those of you familiar with networking, it means that you're going beyond just layer 1 through 4 information and going all the way up to layer 7 into the application data. So a use case for this might be finding a phishing email going across the wire before it even hits the user's inbox or the mail server itself. So that's what we have right here. We actually have this user, or we actually have we can see this email. It's coming from a source IP in France, and it's hitting our mail server, and this is where we're catching this network flow. I can actually go into the network flow, and using this QRadar Network Insights, for those interested, this would be connected via a span or a tap into the network. We can go into this and start pulling out some of the payload data, especially things of interest. Very, very good at finding documents going across the wire. So a lot of our customers, they might be worried about something like, hey, do we have credit card numbers or something that matches the format of a credit card number going unencrypted across our network? That's something that we wouldn't want to see. Well, we can find that with QRadar Network Insights. Hey, are there phrases like confidential or private or secret in documents going across the wire, going outside of our network? Well, we can catch that with QRadar Network Insights as well. In this case, we're actually just finding a phishing email. So as we see, we have the victim's email address right here. This is the recipient. T. Vickers is the username. And we can see that they were sent something by, it looks like the CIO from their email address. And you can see there's a little bit of spoofing going on with this email address. It got registered as an EDW instead of EDU, hoping that, hey, maybe this person won't look at it quickly enough. Also some classic phishing tactics here, where we can see that the subject line for this email is an important document, and the file name is important docx. So it's thinking, hey, this person doesn't look close enough, they'll think this is an important document and try to open it. What we can do with QRadar is actually start blocking these, banning these files before they actually get to the mail server itself. So you don't even have to worry about a user clicking on this by any chance. The other thing I wanted to show really quickly is that the rule that got triggered here, if I go back into flows, is actually based on the hash of the attachment. So if you're not familiar with what hashing is, it's essentially running, you can run a document or pretty much any piece of data through this hashing algorithm. It does a lot of math on it, and it'll give theoretically a unique value to that input that you give it. So if you had a Word document and you just deleted a period and then ran it through the same hashing algorithm, it'd be totally different. You wouldn't be able to tell at all. So for instance, this is the hash of the document we got. But every single character potentially could be different if we just deleted one period from that document. And so this is a known bad file hash of this attachment, and that's actually the alert that we're catching here. Mail traffic with a known malware hash. So let me go back and continue this investigation. It's also interesting, this one's pretty interesting, so I'm going to send this, as I open up the continuance of this, I'm actually going to investigate this one with Watson and see what he finds as I investigate this manually. So this is the kind of continuance of this investigation, saying that this T. Vickers guy actually did fall for this attack. And we can see there's some pretty anomalous stuff going on this workstation. So this person is using PowerShell on their system. How many of you guys know what PowerShell is? Okay, again, only a handful of us, gives you a clue that a lot of people wouldn't be using this on their desktop exactly. It's a tool that mostly a systems administrator in IT would use. If you're just a lay user, a regular user, it's not much of a reason to be running PowerShell at your workstation. Especially for the uninitiated attack, pretty good indicator that their machine might have been compromised. What PowerShell allows you to do essentially is using command line. You can do anything in a Windows environment that you can do just using your mouse and keyboard and clicking on stuff. So anything you can do on your computer with Windows, you can actually do in PowerShell just by typing in commands. Very, very popular with attackers because it's a way of controlling your computer without being seen. We also have them using a command line to browse the internet. So I don't know about you guys, but when I Google something, I don't do it from my terminal. I do it from a browser like Firefox or Chrome. I don't just go in, start typing in commands on my terminal. Pretty unusual, and that's what this one is finding as well. So we can actually go in and go into these flows and realize that we have something bad going on. So let's go into these flows. Go in the first one here. Oh, maybe the second one here. Oh, guess I did not feed this data incorrectly. But essentially what, actually it has to be in one of these. Let's see which one we're, oh, here we go. So we get this user. It looks like they're actually going and if you look at it, they went and downloaded a JPEG file. So just a picture file, but the user agent they used for this was PowerShell. So it's pretty unusual, again, to use a command line to download a picture with something attackers will use all the time to evade detection. And as we investigate this, we'll see this is actually a pretty sophisticated attack that just happened. Let's see if Watson's still going here, actually. I'll actually go and turn this one over to Watson without having to walk through it manually. So we can go over to Watson here, and he'll do his investigation. He's looked at it and said, this is something that's of high concern to me. It definitely does not look good. If he'd seen something like this in your environment before, he'd tell you, based on what you guys generally do, I would escalate this, I'd close it as a false positive. He'll actually learn from what the users in your organization do. He also will give you a paragraph kind of spitting out, here's what the sum of my investigation. So it looks like we have, for instance, muddy water might be the campaign involved in this. Then probably my favorite feature that he does is he'll actually graph this to a relationship graph. So you'll see it centers on the source of the investigation, which was the source IP, and then he'll go and find all the related artifacts from your organization. So right here in totality is what Watson is finding from his investigation into this incident. For me, I would say I was a pretty good cyber analyst, but for me to get a link analysis chart this concise in 5 minutes, I don't think I could do this. This is the real advantage of having Watson. For our customers, I would say there's 2 different use cases they use this in. Most of our customers will actually have Watson begin their investigations. So as soon as an offense is created, they'll click on Watson and they'll see, hey, what did Watson find? And then we'll build our investigation off of that. Some of our advanced users, especially ones and some more sensitive fields, if they have the resources, they'll do their entire investigation themselves. Yes. Oh, perfect. And then what they'll do from there is go and send it to Watson after they do their investigation and kind of make sure to check their work. So they'll say, hey, this is what I found. Let's check Watson, see what he finds, and make sure we didn't miss anything. So I can go and see here. Okay, it looks like this workstation is connected with this user. We have T. Vickers right here, or Timothy Vickers. This is the guy we saw earlier, T. Vickers. And we can see why this person tried to spoof the CIO's email address earlier. It's because this person's an administrative assistant to the CIO. probably has a lot of access to some of the CIO's information, a good person to start an attack on. And from there, we can see that there's actually a number of file hashes seen. These ones are coming from some sysmon logs. And Watson will look for file hashes across the network and look for indicators. So we're seeing a Trojan right here that he's found, another Trojan right here, and then if I scroll over here, a third Trojan to kind of finish this off. What's nice about Watson as we look through these is he'll actually cite his sources as well. So as an analyst, when you're looking at this, you can actually click on these links and read more information about why he's citing, why he thinks this is happening. So we can see here, we got some information from CrowdStrike on why this is bad. We have IBM information. We also have some Cisco information as well. So as I'm looking for this, I don't even have to start Googling Watson. Watson's already searched for it himself. That allows us to investigate a lot faster what's going on. What we end up getting is that we actually have all of these incidents, actually all 3 file hashes and some of the IPs are tied to this threat actor. This threat actor is known as Static Kitten. They're also known as Muddy Water. And for those of you who are a little more in depth in the cybersecurity field, also known as APT33, a threat group based out of Iran that does some pretty advanced attacks. This attack is very convoluted. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever seen those Russian dolls where you open it up, break it in half, open it up, and there's a smaller version of that Russian doll in there. And you keep opening it up and finding more stuff. That's kind of how they like to do their attacks. They'll download a file that eventually runs a script that downloads another file, that runs another script that downloads another file, and then after 5 or 6 layers, then the actual really bad malware gets loaded. So what they'll try to do is it's kind of what we consider obfuscation by recursion. They just have a lot of ways of trying to hide that so you don't find exactly what you're looking for. Well, Watson, again, 5 minutes, and he's found that all. What I can then do is send this, now that I have found this with Watson, I can actually just quickly send this over to Resilient. So maybe I'll say this is one of our phishing emails.
Hey Max,
yes?
Before sending it to the Resilient, can we have like a short break?
Yeah. Yeah, so let's take a short break really quick, and then I'll show you.
Just jump into because it's another solution owned by IBM, so
Yep.
it's a very important one, and I used to work with Resilient. It's a great source. Let's get some fresh air, and then we can.
Okay. Let's take a short break, and then we'll continue with this. Oh, thank you. Max, nice to meet you.
So I downloaded IBM Community Edition in the house.
Yeah.
And I tried to forward syslogs from the router to Community Edition.
Yep.
And for some reason it didn't work for me as good.
Interesting.
So maybe I did something wrong. So I went to the router.
Yep.
And I did port forwarding and used 514 or something like that.
Yep.
The port number, and I still wasn't able to receive it. So do I have to install something with DM or whatever?
So which router are you using? Let me turn this.
We can let the online folks just the
Okay.
health check first.
Yep.
We can hear you.
So just for the online users, just want to make sure you can still hear me. And we're about to begin after a short break. Welcome back, guys. Actually, I wanted to show you one more thing before I set this over to Resilient, because I think this is something that's pretty cool, and I've talked to some of our customers who use this feature every day. So IBM is a very big security organization. We also have a research arm called the X-Force, which does a lot of threat research. And they'll actually go and categorize and find different attacks that have happened in real world and create alerts based on that. So from this one, we can see that this is an attack that happened in real world. They do a quick write-up of it and some notes about it. You can actually go with QRadar and just click this button and say, am I affected? And this will actually search through your instance. It's pretty cool. What it's actually doing is importing what we call, it's importing we got a question earlier about those, searching like a query. It's actually sending your computer a query and doing a local query. So not sending any information outside of your network and figuring out what's going on. So we can see here if we view results, it's going to take a sec. Oh, here we go. We can actually see, oh, based on this attack that IBM has seen before, you are affected by this. We can see all of these source IPs, some file hashes, the same things that we found here. Just by going to the article and then clicking, hey, does this attack affect me? You can figure that out. And I can, for those of you who are interested in the query, I'm just going to open this up and we can see, let me hover over it. It's hard to read, but that's the actual query that went into your QRadar. So somewhat advanced, but just using a quick API, we can pull all of that in directly into the QRadar. So now I showed this feature, I will go ahead and move this over to Resilient. So we got this incident. We realized that it looks like it might be an Iranian attack that's happening against our system here. What I can go ahead and do is just send this over to Resilient. I'm going to call this a phishing incident. And it's now bringing me over right to Resilient. What's nice is it actually is bringing all this data from QRadar directly into Resilient. So Resilient is saying, hey, what do we have here? We have malware. We have phishing. Looks like we have some impersonation going on as well, and an email. It's also sending this over. It's making the cybersecurity incident response team the owner of this incident, giving you some information on when this date was created, and some of the other stats here. One of the nice things, this is kind of mentioned as a core use case of Resilient, is the fact that it gives you a playbook or run book of how to respond to this incident. So let's say, I'm new in the SOC. I've worked a lot with, scans against our network and maybe some insider threat use cases. I'm not too familiar with how we handle phishing. Well, I now have all the steps in handling phishing laid out for me. I don't have this built into my system right now, just because it's a pretty new Resilient VM that I have. But you can also, Resilient is built on a Python platform. So for anyone familiar with the Python language, you can actually go and start automating these tasks. So I've gone into some of our customers, and they'll actually have their system automate this, where it's actually crossing things off the list dynamically, saying, oh, we'll send this over to our malware analysis system. Oh, we'll go and pull out some email headers. Oh, we'll go and check the network activity or send this to a sandbox. So without any user interactions, you'll see these things kind of checking themselves off as they go. Also, if you're not familiar with it, you can get some pretty nice instructions in here. So it's saying, okay, this step we have to review some the output from antivirus. It's actually giving you exactly information on how to do this and some steps here from NIST, which is a government standards organization. So I could just go ahead and say, let's say I went ahead and follow these steps. I can go and check and say, okay, I've now done 10% of triaging this offense. If I needed to get people involved, let's say, you know, we need to send this over to our legal and policy team, I could add them as well, and now they're getting involved in this as well. So as we go to our tasks and we see that some of this might be notifying internal management or public relations or HR or the Federal Trade Commission, now our legal team is involved in this as well. And you can give them limited access or full access depending on what they need. So maybe they don't need the information about the malware or even the username of the person involved in this. You can just give them limited access so that they can take care of some of their tasks. As we go over here, we can also see that from QRadar, it's pulling some of the information here. So we got some IP addresses and some malware hashes that we've seen. So I could even go and start, you know, I could, let's say I go with this, well, these are all internal. So let's just pretend that this was a external IP address. I could go and block it with our Cisco ASA. Maybe it's a file hash and I want to ban it with a Carbon Black endpoint. I could go ahead and do that. And now that file hash, whenever it's seen, will be quarantined as soon as it's seen on any device in our network. So it gives you a lot of really quick, easy ways to remediate this. If we need to, we can also start sending emails. As emails happen about this incident, they can get added to this for a chain. And we can start writing notes. So for instance, I can say finished, spell that right, finished initial triage. I can post that note. And there should be a bidirectional API where I actually, when I finish sending this, you'll actually see this in the QRadar as well on the notes section as well. So really, really helpful. A lot of timeline will show you exactly like when different tasks were done. So we have 33 open tasks. 4 of them were completed today. For a large incident, this might bleed over a few days. You can start tracking the kind of activity and the completion status over time. Let's say that this is a breach. We also have a privacy module. So I can go in here and start saying, we can say this data was not encrypted, it was electronic. Maybe we can say, hey, we got some personal information that was taken. And I can say, okay, this happened to take place in, let's do a hard one. Say California. And 150 of these users were in California. Well, they'll start actually saying, hey, we have some California laws. I know pretty soon, I think next year, CCPA, which is a California privacy standard, comes out, which will have a lot of ramifications for pretty much anyone in the US, because unless you somehow blacklist California people from using your information systems, you'll fall under that jurisdiction. I could also say, hey, maybe I'm a financial institution, and I had to notify PCI, follow those protocols, and then let Treasury Department know, and say maybe it was California health information. I can save this, and as I update it, it'll actually add tasks. So it's saying now, based on its jurisdictions and the legal requirements, I now have to notify the Inspector General of the Treasury. I have to provide, due to California's laws, since California residents had their data breached, I now have to provide free identity theft protection to all the California people who were affected by this. And it goes throughout this list. So as I go back to tasks, it tells you just based on some of the jurisdiction and legal standards. It's nice as an organization, You don't, again, have to call your lawyers, call specialist lawyers. This software is actually taking care of all the legal requirements. And for a lot of our large corporations and government entities, it's a huge benefit that they're getting out of it. So I go back here. You should now see that some of these we have by here. And look, California, I guess they give you 15 days. So this has to happen within 15 days. There might be, well, it looks like these people need to know, oh, within 1 hour of discovery of a breach. Under this law, you have to notify someone within 1 hour. Imagine that. For me as a SOC analyst, many times within 1 hour of a breach, I'm still looking for IP addresses and file hashes and stuff. I haven't even thought about contacting anyone about, hey, I think a breach happened. Well, guess what? I would actually be in violation of that law. This is really, really helpful for making sure that you won't get sued down the line as well. Exactly, and so yeah, that's the way a lot of people try to wiggle out of it as well. One that was discovered. The thing with Resilient is you not have that chain where you're saying we did discover it at this time, so we have to go and notify them. I don't think you have to give too much. So actually, and then discovered. So you actually get here. Well, actually tells you the legal definition. So this is a breach. So whenever you realize that a breach has happened, so loss or suspected or loss of actual control. That way, if you're sitting there and saying, under this legal requirement, what is a breach? What is discovered? Well, we help you out there as well with breaking that down. So all of this is really helpful. And when you bring in the automation side, it brings even more value to your organization. It's worth noting that while I did show that this integrates with QRadar, it does with any SIM. So Logarithm, Splunk, Alien Vault, we can integrate with those as well. And then we also have quite a number of users who are going kind of analog and will have different emails send to Resilient and then start this incident as well. So it doesn't even need to come directly from a SIM. Perfect. The one other thing I just wanted to do is show you this dashboard here. So this is one of our newest apps. Again, probably our second most popular app, which is Pulse. This gives you the view of a SOC. This is when I walk into our customer sites. Usually, if they have like the big monitors, like what you'll see in the SOC in there, this is the view they'll have on there. It kind of gives, for me, I call it like the 007 screen. Like when you watch a James Bond movie and they're saying MI5 or MI6, this is the kind of stuff they have up on screen. It's high tech. Oh, look at this world. We can see things shooting from here over there, so we can follow this along and see which IPs we're connecting across where and get this nice visual view. All these views are completely customizable, so for each organization, you can find what you want. Another thing that's important, often goes undiscussed when it comes to SIM, is reporting. So there's a lot of companies that need to, for compliance reasons or just for their own reasons, like to do regular reports. With QRadar, we have several hundred out-of-the-box reports, and then for different jurisdictions, so if you have to fall under PCI DSS or you have to comply with NIST RMF or FISMA, you can download what we would call content packs, which would give you extra reports based on those standards. So for instance, if as a government organization I needed to follow this NIST RMF framework, we could just schedule these reports to run automatically every day, email to whoever needs to see it, and you don't really need to touch it. And then just because I have a few extra minutes, I want to follow up the first investigation we found. You remember the investigation we started with the large outbound transfer? We saw those IP addresses from North Korea. I sent that one over to Watson as well during our break, and we can see exactly what was found from this one as well. This is actually a much more robust attack than the other one. I don't know if, is anyone in here familiar with the MITRE attack framework? Okay, so good. So MITRE is a cybersecurity kind of research organization, and they came out with this attack framework which tries to conceptualize and break down what happens over the course of an attack. They said when someone breaks into their system, these and kind of a high-level view is what they'll try to do. So they'll try to break in with initial access. Then they'll try to gain persistence so that even if you reset your machine, they're still in control of it, and so on and so forth. Well, they ended up coming up with 11 tactics as part of their framework, and it looks like about 9 of them or more are taking place here. So the majority of the tactics in MITRE are actually taking place, which shows that this is a pretty robust attack. As we go over to our Watson view, we can see, okay, it's centered around this user, which we saw earlier, the username Insider. And we can actually pull from the Active Directory LDAP environment what this user's role is. So this user is a senior systems administrator, a good target for a hacker to compromise because they probably have access to a lot of machines on your network. And this is where we fed in some real data here. So as we can see, this user is first associated with this workstation. So this would be, this IP address is their normal workstation here. As we look at it, we can actually see that they went to a website. So going through the proxy logs, we can see that this is the website they navigated to, software.opm.gov. Our X-Force investigates this and say this is a legit government, that this is a legit government organization. But something interesting went on. So they went to go download some software from Office of Personnel Management, probably some HR software. Well, it looks like this website got redirected to an IP address. You can tell this IP address is bad, number one, because it's in red. And number two, remember this is a .gov website, ends up resolving to an IP address based out of China, which is not normal for a US government entity to base their websites in another country. So what we get here is probably something like DNS hijacking, where they put in their browser, www.opm.gov, and in the back end, that DNS request got hijacked and they got connected to an IP address somewhere else. What they end up doing is actually downloading 2 pieces of malware right here. So if we look at this, we can see there's a malware right here, which is a store piece of malware. And then we get another one, which is a downloader malware. Overall, we can actually see these 2 file hashes that we're seeing here are part of a suite of tools called Hack Tool, which is, so there's some commonality between the uses of these tools. What these are essentially remote access. What this gives them the capabilities of a remote access Trojan. And we can see that right here. We get this Trojan as well. A remote access Trojan will essentially give you the ability to control a machine remotely. You can do things like view people through their webcams, take screenshots of their computer as they're using it, use that keylogger capability where you can see what they're typing in real time. Very, very popular for kind of initial phase attack. As we go back to this user, we can actually go and see that this user now becomes associated with this IP address, which then becomes associated with their workstation. And this was actually the IP address we saw earlier. Right now that X-Force is looking up this IP address and realizing, hey, this is this North Korean IP address we actually saw earlier in the day. As we continue this on, we can actually see this user has now become associated with this, this machine right here. This is actually the machine we saw earlier in the first offense as well. This is this personnel record server at the very beginning. And we go to this personnel record server. We can see again another file hash right here, which is associated with this machine through this line. And along this file hash indicator, we have a bunch of different antivirus hits. We also have a malware hit right here. So this malware would be the key marble malware was detected from this file hash. And we also, Watson saying, hey, there's a group here that we know has used this file in the past in their attacks. And if we click on it, we can see that the threat actor here is the North Koreans. And again, he cites his sources, so if we want to see exactly why, we can see that there's a report based on North Korean users of marble malware in the past. And finally, as we scroll through here, we can actually see that this file hash, along with the two we saw earlier, are all connected with this specific threat actor, which is the Lazarus group. It's a very, very famous hacking group based out of North Korea. They're behind some attacks like they hacked the Winter Olympics in South Korea a few years ago. They hacked Sony Pictures a few years ago when what was the name of the movie? The Interview was coming out about North Korea. They did not like that and ended up hacking hacking Sony Pictures to punish them for making a movie about a comedy movie about North Korea. And they also were behind they're believed to be behind WannaCry, which was a very, very dangerous ransomware outbreak from a few years ago as well. So very, very active threat group here. And we can see that within a few minutes, again, Watson's able to give you all the way to this attribution of figuring out what's going on. So you can see, again, here the benefit of bringing this into our system. I have seen, we continue to update Watson, so there's about several billions of pieces of cybersecurity data he's trained on. If you're familiar with the name Watson and IBM Watson, this is a specific Watson just for cybersecurity. It's not the same Watson that was playing Jeopardy a few years ago, if you happen to see that. It's one that is trained just on cybersecurity so that he learns things like, hey, you don't need to know what an IP address is generally. You need to know what an IP address is in the context of cybersecurity. You don't need to learn what a backdoor is when you're talking about building design. You need to learn what a backdoor is when it comes to a computer system. So having all of that knowledge, being able to actually read cybersecurity articles, figure out what's important, and training based on that. That's where our Watson is built on. And he's able to deliver insights and views like this, which kind of enhance what an analyst is able to do. I want to pause real quick and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, I have a question online.
How do I sum up Watson?
Yeah,
that's a good question. I think I actually have a slide. I didn't show this one. This is exactly how I would sum up Watson. Not this. Take us a second. There we go. And so essentially this is what he's doing. So he's doing several different types of data analysis. And again, it's billions of types. So every 5 to 10 times an hour, he's actually going through some structured data sets. So known bad hashes, known bad IP addresses. So as these indicators are brought into the knowledge of cybersecurity in general, whether it's through our partners or open source fields, multiple times an hour, he's learning what these mean. He's also going and looking through blogs and research. So, for websites like maybe a SANS Alerts, or for something like the Hacker News or Krebs on Security, they're actually going through these blogs and articles and reading these several times an hour as well. Again, that's why we had to train them just for cybersecurity to understand what some phrases that have specific meanings in our field mean compared to what they would generally mean elsewhere, like a backdoor, or, when we tell Watson this is a Trojan, we don't want him to go and think, oh, the guys who fought the Greeks 2,000 years ago? Like, no, not those Trojans. We're talking about, malware, essentially. And then every week, we'll actually go and update him with different parts of hundreds of thousands of different things, best practices, courses of action, and more unstructured kind of data he's doing through his web crawling. And this actually kind of goes full circle for us. IBM Security actually started off as a separate company called ISS, which kind of started with the mission of indexing the internet. So what they want to do is figure out what's every website, and we want to track that, keep track of that. We've been stuck at about 50% for a long time because the internet grows at just the same pace that we're continuing to index it. But we're actually, as we're kind of indexing it, feeding that information back into Watson as well. So again, right now he has several millions of pieces of documents he's reading, over 10 billion pieces of data, elements of data, and then he's able to read 800,000 documents a day for cybersecurity. I read a lot, but I don't think I'm getting anywhere near those. So you can see the advantage of bringing in some artificial intelligence into that. And we do, our main Watson corpus is actually housed in our cloud. So it kind of gets bigger and bigger and bigger every day. And we can reach into that with APIs. Let's see, any other questions?
Is there a communication?
Not right now. I want to see that happen because it is a pretty awesome tool. I would expect as we continue to mature, Watson for cybersecurity has only been around for, I would say, 18 months or so is really how long it's been around. I would think in that pretty soon, as we start shifting more of our focus in general to cloud, because that's where organizations and users are kind of shifting to in general, I would think that we'd start having some cloud APIs. There's other Watsons you can use. There's other Watsons you can use from IBM for free in our cloud. So there's like Watson text analytics. So you can feed a book into Watson, and he'll say, you know, this chapter was really sad chapter. This one was really exciting. And so those APIs are free. I'd be surprised if a year, 18 months from now, we don't have something like that for cybersecurity to allow users to get more experience working with Watson. And I think it gives the benefit of Watson getting more data and more AI and is really as strong as the training and the modeling you give it. So as you're able to train it with more people, I would think the fidelity would probably increase as well. So short answer, no. But long answer, I hope so in the future. Yes, sir.
I have one question. I think she's another question. So the first question was, what's like the pricing model? Do you like price it based on events or just a number of servers, or what's the pricing model? That's
for QRadar in general. So in general, it's based on actually events per second. And then when you bring in flows, it's flows per minute. The reason we don't do flows per second is too many times those sessions are more than a second long, and you don't want to fuzz up that math. So we just make it per minute. Yep, and it scales up, so it's not gonna it kind of goes incrementally, so that as your organization grows or you want to feed more data sources in there, it becomes more manageable for a cost.
And then also too, like in terms of the I guess like the installation options, so like you just normally would install it on server on-prem, or you guys have a cloud option too, or whatever just how you guys install it.
So that's a good. So the answer is yes. We do all of them. So I would say half of our clients, and I continue to, I think this is probably going to become smaller and smaller over the course of time. Half of our clients will buy our appliance from us. So if you're a federal entity, we'll give a Dell server. Commercial entity, put it on a Lenovo server. You just plug it into your data center. If it's some of our customers will say, hey, you know what? We have a special deal, we're a special deal with Dell, Lenovo, HP, or whatever, where we get X% off of our servers, and we can actually get the same spec server for cheaper with our relationship with that server manufacturer. Well, they can buy their appliance, and we'll load the software on that appliance, like a bare metal installation. And then we also can install as a virtual machine. So if you have VMware, we can put it in that as well. And then we also do have two other options, which are marketing very genius names: QRadar on cloud and QRadar in cloud. So if you like your prepositions, have fun there. QRadar on cloud is in IBM's cloud. So it's kind of a managed SIM, more of a SaaS kind of software as a service. You don't have to worry about all this administration, making sure that your IOPS are going and stuff like that. We'll take care of all of that. We also do QRadar in cloud, which means you can spin up QRadar in Azure or AWS. Right now we support as well. I think we'll have Google Cloud in the next near future as well. So we can spin those up as well. And I didn't mention this, but it's pretty cool to notice that QRadar can extend as well. So for some of our large organizations, a single box can handle it's about 15,000 events per second. and 500,000 flows per minute is what our single box will give you, and you'll still get the GUI and the interface just from that one box. Some of our customers, about half of our customers, that's plenty. Some of our customers will have way more than that, and we can have special boxes just to handle even more events and even more network flows. And it's just a stackable thing. So get another one, you double it, and get 8 more, you get 8 times the input that one box would handle. So pretty easy math to do there. And you can add that even more. So let's say you want to run our UBA and you want to have machine learning and a few other apps. You can get an app node, which is the ability to do some data processing outside of the console. So that way you're not using machine learning, doesn't impact the user interface. So if you click on reports tab, it doesn't slow down just because it's also doing machine learning processing in the background. You can offload that in what we call an app node. For organizations that need to do some full packet capture, we have some customers who say, hey, we want to actually every byte or bit that goes across our network, we want to store that and keep it for 10 years. Well, we can give your PCAP appliances that will allow you to do that, and some forensic appliances that allow you to do analysis as well on that. And when it comes to a lot of our customers, especially large financial institutions, will do that because they'll say, hey, we want to store everything. It might be encrypted, and we might not be able to read it, but if we keep it for 10 years, maybe we'll have quantum by then, and we'll be able to see exactly what this hacker did. And so I've talked to customers who actually will store for 10, 15 years, and we don't charge by, when it comes to our stuff, we don't charge by storage at all. It's just ingestion rate only. So if you want to keep your data for 7 days or you want to keep it for 70 years, it's same price. Yep, good questions. Those are important questions, the dollar question. Awesome. So just want to see if there are any more questions. Oh, yes, sir.
Ken?
So, no, we have hundreds of different customers that are using QRadar. We do use it internally. So IBM, as an organization, we get 8 billion log events per day. And we keep track of all of that in QRadar. So we are a very large QRadar customer, but we actually aren't the biggest QRadar customer, believe it or not. We have some oil companies that are doing tens of billions of events per day. One of ours is very well tuned. They actually get 15 alerts just based on the tens of billion events per day. They end up with just 15 alerts at the end of the day, per day. So it makes it a lot more manageable. So yeah, and I should also mention, I can't believe I forgot to mention this. This is my ultimate nerd pitch here. So give me a second as I get out of PowerPoint. So you'll see here, I actually am running this, what I showed you guys today, I'm actually running this on QRadar Community Edition. So Community Edition is free. You can download it from the IBM website if you want to learn anything more about QRadar. I use it all the time. I know Omer runs Community Edition as well. And so something that you can just set up, you just need to get your own CentOS virtual machine. You can load QRadar on top of that. Again, free. There are some limitations. You can only do 100 events per second. At your home, you probably won't be doing too much more than that unless you have a very verbose firewall at your home. And everything I showed you except Watson can run on Community Edition. So all the other apps can run on there as well. Only reason I wouldn't run Watson on Community Edition is because you have to pay for it. If you're paying for Watson, you might as well just pay for the full features. But all the apps will run on Community Edition. So if you want to test it out, play with it on your home network, maybe put it in a kind of dev environment, it's a good tool to use. Perfect. Well, no more questions. I want to thank you guys so much for coming here today. I really enjoyed talking to you. And if you have any questions, I'll stick around. Happy to answer any questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Max, for coming. And beautiful presentation on QRadar. I've got a couple of questions that was asked to me during the break. I would like to answer those very quick if you've got a couple of minutes. Mainly about cybersecurity analyst training. So I wasn't really ready for this, but let me pull something up here real quick. You can stop sharing it, and I will start sharing, but I'm going to need that as well. All right, I think people can see my screen now. Perfect. So one of the questions was, how did you start? How did you came up with this idea? Weren't you happy with what you were doing at your current job, in your day job? What made you start this? So I work as a senior manager in the information security office, and I've been in financial industry for a while now. One of the things I talk to you guys about during the session is, during the break is, for example, I have about 7, 8 people on my team right now, and we're looking to add another 7, 8 within the next 1 year. We've been looking for a long time, and this is the problem that most of the managers or senior managers across like industry, whether it's financial or some other line of business industry, it doesn't really matter. When you go to them and ask, do you have enough people on your team? They're going to say, I've got this many number of open headcount. So that is exactly what we're trying to address here. We're trying to contribute to the solution of that problem, which is basically giving people the tools that they need to get up to speed and step their feet into cybersecurity. You can look up online courses and do all that stuff. That's great. It's a good starting point, but especially the second piece, and I showed you guys this before, but the second piece here around like secure operations center, like functions, different tools that are being used in those secure operations centers, you really can't find that on an online course. And that's what we do here. Omar, my business partner, he is managing a SOC. He built many SOCs before from scratch, and we actually built another one next door. We can take a look afterwards. When you said like QRadar Community Edition, I was like, this is a good segue into my presentation here. So what we did was we actually built all that here with all the tools, security onions, different machines, ticketing tools, Elk, Grow, QRadar, Metasploitables, all sorts of different like firewalls. We built everything in that secure operations center for you to come and sit down and work like a security analyst. That's the first thing that you should do to make that like switch. To be able to say, I am a security analyst, and then 6 months from now, you'll be working as a security analyst at some company. That is our goal with this program, and that's how we came up with it. And this is we're in our 3rd cohort right now. We had about 60 students. We have 40 students in our current cohort, and the next one is going to start on January 11th, about 2 months from now, and it's going to run for 4 months, 18 weeks in total. We do have information sessions coming up. If you want to get more information, I would suggest you should basically go to the website and click on this link, sign up for our next information session, so we can have your information, and we'll share the next information session with you. It'll likely be here, or you can join online as well, and we'll share details about the program, what we expect from you, and what you should be expecting from the program. And if it's a good match, bingo, let's do it. If not, let's figure out some other options. Any questions?
You share this slide with us, or
Yeah,
I can share the slides.
So what we can do is, rather than collecting your emails here, let's do this. I'm going to send the link to the slides and to the presentation as well, so you can watch it as well, not just the slide. Sign up on the website. Just your don't apply, but just click on that sign up link. I'll send all of the email addresses who signed up. Deal? I'll link to the session so you can watch the whole thing. Cool. All right. Thank you very much for coming, everyone. Amar, you'll take them to SAC if they want to see it. Thank you very much. And online folks, thanks for joining us. See you guys later.